we just don't get any time with any of them. Like, hi, hello, welcome back. My name is Trina. It's nice to meet you. Today I'm doing something a little bit different, for me at least, which is in pursuit of fueling my new obsession of about 5 hours, which is Wicked this week. Basically, up until like yesterday, I had a totally sparse and incomplete knowledge of Wicked. I knew a couple of the most popular songs from Glee and stuff, and I knew Idina Menzel, and I knew Kirsten Chenoweth, and I knew that it was so iconic, but I actually knew so little about the story. And I'm gonna be honest, I actually wasn't planning on even watching the movie until like it came out in streaming or if someone else asked me to go. But that all changed when the Fire Nation attacked. And by Fire Nation, I mean Plant-Based Bride's video about the Wicked book and the musical and talking about them in depth for about an hour and a half that occupied my whole morning yesterday while I was doing work. And I realized, okay, wait, that's what Wicked's about? It's about overcoming oppression? Like, I did not realize. I thought all I knew about Wicked was the song Popular. And I realized that this could be something I could actually really enjoy. And then we listened to the playlist basically all of yesterday and I got obsessed. And now I'm ready to begin my Wicked journey. I may not be able to go back in time and read Wicked as a teenager and fall in love with the musical when I was having my musical phase. I was a Hamilton girl, unfortunately. But I can relive that entire experience in the next week and then go see the movie and act like this is some very important thing to me. And that's what I'm gonna do because I wanna be a part of the hype. And when I say the full experience, I'm talking about the full experience in this video. I wanna go back and to the OG, the reference for Wicked, The Wizard of Oz. I've seen so many TikToks about the little references to the original Wizard of Oz movie that are in Wicked, so I also kind of want to be a part of that, and I can't believe I've never watched the Wizard of Oz movie, like the iconic 1939 one with Judy Garland, and I actually have never read the Wizard of Oz either. So for this first part of this video, I wanted to take it way, way back to 1900, and I'm going to be reading The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by Frank Baum. This should be a pretty quick part of the video because this is only a 200-page book. It's only a 4-hour audiobook. I could whip that out while playing Stardew this afternoon. And the movie is also like an old-time movie that I can't really show on here, but I can give my reaction. But I feel like it would be wrong to start this journey anywhere else. I feel like I need to start there. And then after I've read The Wizard of Oz and watched The Wizard of Oz movie, then I will read the Wicked book, which just came in the library. And when I tell you, after watching Plant-Based Bride's video, I have been itching to read Wicked. Like, I actually am so excited about it. She really hyped it up for me. Like, I'm actually really excited about reading that book. And then after that, I may or may not acquire a bootleg of Wicked the Musical. Who knows? And get that experience as well. And then I'll finally end with watching the movie. But that is my plan for the week. I'm very excited for this little journey and to document and make a little video out of it. But starting off, we go back to the 1900s, we go back to the classics, and we read The Wizard of Oz.
I'm starting to realize I actually didn't know how this story was going to go whatsoever. I'm so intrigued to see if this is also in Wicked.
Hello, I'm back, and it did not take me long at all to read The Wizard of Oz by Frank Baum. I am surprised and shocked by how much I love this story. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised because I notoriously love children's fantasy. Not only does it like bring back all the good memories, but also just I love these simplistic lessons in fantasy sometimes that it's like take care of your friends, take care of people, be nice to people, and then they'll come back around and help you out in the future. A good deed will always come back around to bring further good deeds, all that. Good begets good and bad begets bad. I love all of those little lessons things. So maybe it shouldn't have surprised me how much I like this little story. Maybe it was because it was surprising me. I actually was shocked to discover that I actually knew much less about this story than I thought I did. In my head, when I think of The Wizard of Oz, I think of like Dorothy goes to Oz. She needs to go back to Kansas. She meets these companions who need things. They defeat the wizard, they defeat the Witch of the West. They go to Oz and he sends them home. But it's not like that. It makes more sense in the story, but like they go to the Oz and Oz then tells them to go defeat the Witch of the West. I don't know. I feel like talking about this book in detail wouldn't be spoilers, but this whole vlog, I think I might just make like kind of like a spoilery vlog because it's gonna be kind of hard to talk about these things without like spoiling things. But I had kind of forgotten, or maybe I didn't know in the first place, that Oz isn't actually a wizard. Oz is from Omaha and came to Oz accidentally, and everyone thought he was a wizard, so he just like pulled a trick and let them keep thinking that. I must maybe knew that deep down, but I must have forgotten it. So that part was fun to get to. I also like how in the books, and I don't think I knew this either, that they had what they needed the whole time. Like, the Scarecrow is incredibly smart the whole time. Like, from the beginning, he's like, I have no brain, but he's the planning guy. He's constantly making the plans. The Tin Man is like, I need a heart, but he's constantly the one who takes care of, like, the little animals. He rescues the Queen of Mice, who then later helps them. And the Lion says he has no courage and constantly complains about it, but he has courage. He is constantly facing off evil for them and willing to be courageous for his friends. And that is then represented as well by the fact that Dorothy's slippers, spoiler alert, are how she gets back to Kansas. And she has those slippers the entire book. So it's like she was carrying the solution to her problems with her the whole time, just like her companions were, just like you are. You are probably carrying the solution to your own problems. So I like that like children's fantasy point and theme. I thought it was sweet. I thought it was cute. Really enjoyed it. Happy I read this. I know there's a couple things that are supposedly different in the movie off the bat before I go and watch it now, the 1939 Judy Garland movie. And I'm also expecting it is going to be an old movie. I'm expecting it's not going to be totally modern. I was honestly surprised. I was surprised by how modern this book is. Not actually, but I laughed a lot. There's a character in this book called Gayette, and she's a queen who's too beautiful to be with any man except for like a man that she engineers in the end. But I just thought that was so funny when I got to that line. I was like, I'm reading into this a bit much. But yeah, that overall love the book, and I'm excited to see if the movie stacks up. And I can't believe I've never gotten the full point of this story before. That was really fun to get. I also was annotating it like crazy. I don't know if I can really show. You can see all of my yellow highlights at the bottom here. It probably doesn't show very well, but I was annotating like crazy for anything that might be referenced in Wicked. Basically, any reference to the characters I know carry over to Wicked, like Oz, Elphaba, Glinda, and highlighting anything that I felt like might be relevant there. So we might revisit this book later as I'm trying to form connections between the two and catch those references. But overall, thought it was a cute time. Glad I read it. And now, on to the movie.
Do you like The Wizard of Oz? She went up in a bubble, dog. off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz, because what was there was. Hi, I'm back after watching The Wizard of Oz. It was a fun time. It was an okay time. I liked the book better. Can I say that? I thought the book was nice. I thought the book was cute and fantasy-like. And I thought the movie was good, but took out some of the best parts of the book. And my favorite parts about the movie were the parts that were quoted directly from the book. Like when Dorothy meets the Wizard of Oz and he's like, I am the great and powerful Oz, the great and mighty Oz. And she's like, and I am the timid and shy Dorothy. I'm Dorothy, the timid and shy. Love that. That's straight out of the book. But in terms of differences and in terms of references to Wicked, I was having a good time like filming moments that I know people have said on TikTok are referenced in Wicked. So I wonder if there's more references. There were definitely a ton of songs I didn't realize I already knew. Like, I know a lot of the songs in this movie. This movie is so quintessential to like American culture that somehow I've like absorbed somewhere in my life. I've absorbed these songs before, which was a surprise, a pleasant surprise, but a surprise. Overall, the main difference, obviously, between the book, I think most people probably know this. I'm not gonna go in depth about the differences, but the main difference is that in the movie, she's dreaming. It's all a dream. All the characters in Oz are based off of people in her real life on the farm in Kansas. And in the book, she actually goes to a magical land called Oz, and she actually comes back from it. And I don't know, that takes away kind of some of the magic of it a little bit, I guess. And I know Wicked is probably then it has to be based more on the book, right? Because in Wicked, obviously the Land of Oz does exist. So then it must be based more on the book where the Land of Oz does exist and all of those things do exist. I don't really know. I guess we'll see when we read it, which is coming in next. But first, other thoughts on the movie. I thought it was a silly, goofy, good time. The music is good. The old-timey vibes are good. It was what I expected, I guess, in some respects. It wasn't super surprising, I'll say. Like, some of the graphics, everything like that, were just so silly and goofy. And I hope they're referenced in some sort of silly, goofy way in the Wicked movie. But yeah, the exciting part is, though, that means we're on to the part of the vlog that I've been looking forward to the most, which is reading the book, Wicked. I have the library book ready. Oh my god, it has a map! Yes, I love a map! Look, it has a little map of Oz. That's actually pretty close to what I was picturing in my head when I was reading the Wizard of Oz book. This is technically the cover with the new movie cover on the front. It's a checked out book, but I do like the old cover a lot. Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, a novel by Gregory Maguire. I'm still really hyped about reading this from what I know about it, and I'm excited to get into it. What am I expecting? I guess I'm expecting certain spoilers that I've had spoiled to me over the years about Wicked. It's very well known. There are some things I know. I know that, okay, I guess, like I said, this is gonna be a spoiler-filled reading vlog, just so you know. So go watch the movie, the Wicked movie first, and then come back and watch this vlog. But I do know that Oz is Elphaba's father, and I know that the Wicked Witch of the East is her sister. Oh, and I know that Fiyero becomes a character from the original books that maybe I won't mention, just in case you missed the spoilers, because that's a pretty big one. Even though everyone's making TikToks about it and spoiling things for me, but whatever. So I know these things. I know it's more sexually explicit, and I know it's about Elphaba's life. I know there's 4 books in the series, but I'm pretty sure this goes all the way to her death, unless I'm crazy. But maybe he originally wrote it as like comprehensive, and then he goes back and adds more in the later books in the series. I'm just gonna be reading book 1 for this video, just for the sake of time. I'm very excited for this, and I will be giving my reactions as I go. Let's get started. I'm walking quickly to my favorite bakery to continue reading a little bit and get some pastries. But so far I'm about 10% into Wicked and I'm vibing. We're still in her childhood and everyone's perspective is kind of nuts, so I'm really looking forward to getting into Elphaba's own head once she's actually like grown. So far it's just like really sad and it's only 10 and like they just treat little baby Elphaba so meanly. And I love her and I want only good things for her and I know that's not gonna happen, so but we will continue on and see what happens.
Hello, super quick update on Wicked. I'm not super far, but I did want to give a little update because I'm only reading one book for this vlog, so I might as well talk about it in a little bit more detail. I'm currently at 27% of the way through the book. It has been a few days. It's honestly just moving kind of slowly, which sucks to say because I do want to like it and there's certain things about it that I do like, but it is just both slow and incredibly fast at the same time so far. For one thing, we haven't gotten Elphaba's perspective yet, which is kind of crazy to me because my whole thing going into this book was I was so excited for the character of Elphaba because of like what I've seen on like other people talking about this book, and then we don't even get a character perspective from Elphaba yet, and I'm assuming it's going to come at some point, but I'm so impatient because we're 25% of the way through the book and we haven't gotten the main character's perspective yet. So far, the first like 12% was from her like about toddler years, like her mom, her being born, her mom and her dad, and then all of a sudden there's a massive time skip, hence why it's moving so quickly but also slow. But then we get like the first year at Shiz, the magical school that she's going to, and we don't have any sort of background as to like yet how she got in, why she's going there, what she wants, what her childhood was like after she was like 2 years old, because all of a sudden now we're jumping into Galinda's perspective, and Galinda is the perspective for like 15%. And then I was like, okay, that's fine. And then we get Bach, another character's perspective on Elphaba, on what's going on in the school in like their second year there. And at that point I'm like, okay, this is going so quickly in that I want to get all of these moments from Elphaba's perspective. Like I don't want them from these other characters' perspectives. I want to know what she's thinking, what's been going on in her life, what are the micro interactions of her day, like what's happening there. I don't dislike Galinda and Bach's perspective. They're really well written. They're really interesting. But I just think that that's why it's moving simultaneously so slowly and so quickly for me, is that like we're moving through the timeline very quickly. Like all of a sudden we just found out Elphaba's mom died in childbirth with her daughter, with her younger sister, the Wicked Witch of the East, I guess. Yeah, and then but we don't get any about that from Elphaba's perspective. We didn't get any of that in the childhood, which I was like, I just want more at this point, really, which is crazy because it's such a long book. And it's just covering so much time and it feels like it's going through it very, very quickly. But like I said, 25% of the way through, so I'm not mind made up. I still really like the setting. Especially, I'm so glad I just read The Wizard of Oz because it's such a fun concept in this book where in her childhood and Elphaba's childhood, we're getting a little bit of context on like the political situation at hand, where there are these three religions and they all have very different ideas about like how Oz came about and was created. And when she's very young, then previously Oz is ruled by a line of queens, the Ozimas, I believe. And when she's very young, there's some political chaos where the former Ozma died. Her daughter is too young to become the new Ozma, so her husband becomes regent, and people don't really like the regent, or like it's kind of weird because he's not an Ozma, you know? And then the wizard comes in on his balloon, just like what was described in Oz, that he comes from Kansas or whatever. They don't know that in this book, but he comes in on a balloon, lands, and he must be a great and powerful wizard to do such things. So they name him like leader, and the Wizard of Oz becomes the new leader, and he becomes the wizard. And he starts in setting all these new rules and all these new understandings about creatures that previously had lived with relative freedom in this world, and stirring up all of this like prejudice that was kind of pre-existing but is now being added onto by the wizard. So it's very political intrigue. Like the political situation in this version of Oz and the world building is incredible, is impeccable. It's just the choice of the author to not give us Elphaba's perspective that's pissing me off so far. But yeah, I will continue reading and give another update when I know more, or when we get Elphaba's perspective, for the love of God.
Hey, another quick update. I have so many big feelings about this book. It's moving so quickly. There's so much to discuss. Yeah, I'm at 53% of the way through the book. What is happening? I love so many things about this book. It's just, I have a major complaint to get off my chest. It's moving too quickly. It's not getting into any of the details that I want. And I don't know, I feel like I was promised something and I was let down, because I feel like the descriptions of what happens in this book, totally up my alley, totally my cup of tea. And I was expecting that. So when I went into this, I kind of knew the broad strokes of what would be happening, and I was expecting all this detail, and I was really excited to get into that. There's so little detail about the things going on in this book that are otherwise so interesting. I think the world building in here the world building in Wicked is so cool. It's incredible that like Gregory and Maguire came up with all this stuff, all these explanations that tie into the Wizard of Oz universe, but also don't, but tie into our own universe, but also don't, in a really great way. The whole concept of like animal versus animal rights, really interesting. The romantic relationships and the personal interrelationships, really interesting. We just don't get any time with any of them. Like, I can see that I would love Elphaba and Fiyero together. They have a romantic affair, and I can see that I would absolutely love the two of their relationship, and I can see why they would be so tightly bonded that losing Fiyero would have such an impact on Elphaba as a result. But we only get them on the page for about 7% of the book. Like, they're only in a romantic relationship for about 7% of the book. And it's just not enough time for me personally to feel connected to their relationship enough to understand her grief afterwards. Like, I guess objectively, but I'm like, oh, they're only together for about like 2 to 3 months. And I can understand why that would have an impact on her, but it just felt so fast. And then, like, obviously, I think I'm really interested in their time as kids at Shiz. I'm really interested in her parents' relationship with Turtle Heart, which I think is so funny and so interestingly written, and the effect that has on her family dynamic is so interesting. But there's just not enough space for all of it, and it feels so rushed. Like, this could have been like a 1,200 page novel, or it could have been like a 4-book series going into all these phases. And now I wonder, are the next 3 books in the series going back retroactively and adding more detail, or are they telling whole other stories? Because if they're going back and adding more detail, then I take back my criticisms. But if they're just continuing on with more and more like half-baked stories, I would be so frustrated, because I just like more time with my characters. I need more time with them to feel connected. I feel like maybe if you watched Wicked, the stage show, you knew about it, you watched the movie maybe now, and then you came back to this book, it would be amazing, because it would just be more from that, and you would already have a connection to the characters. But because I don't have a connection yet, I was expecting this book to build that connection, it just feels so rushed. And some of the things that are happening, it's like, why did that happen? Like, I don't think it's outlandish, totally out of the realm of possibility for this to have happened. For example, to this poor character that Tibbet, that Elphaba went to school with, who we randomly get like a 4-page scene where I believe I can't describe that on YouTube. Something happens to him horrendously. And I'm like, okay, it's not totally outlandish that this would happen to him, but then we just deserve an explanation as to like why and the implications and what does it really mean, and not just for the scene to be immediately cut off. That just kept happening. I would get like into a scene, and like I said, I'm loving what's happening, so I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. I love the conversations between Elphaba and Fiyero. I love the debates they're having. I love their dynamic. And then we just get cut off, and then there's another 10-year time jump. And I'm like, calm down a little bit. Like, can we slow down? Can we get a little bit more time? I thought this was supposed to be the backstory of Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, I feel like I'm getting a lot of back, but not a lot of story. But I don't want this to be like a negative thing because I actually do really like it. It's not really what I was expecting, but despite that, I do like it. I think. That's where I'm at right now, and we got for like 10 pages, Elphaba's perspective, or Elphaba's third person perspective for the first time, which was very interesting. It was very pleasant. Even though she was super depressed, I was like waiting for this moment the whole book, so we finally got it. And now we've immediately switched to someone else's perspective again, which I don't hate. It just was not what I was expecting. I was going into this with expecting a very character-focused story, and it's not very character-focused, which just sucks for me on a reading level. That being said, I do think there's some really cool parts here. The part with what I'm assuming is the backstory for the Cowardly Lion intrigued me. I love that. I love the way that like the students came together to protect this baby lion and like actually agreed with Elphaba in that case, when most often the times they think that she's like too extreme and were mad at that professor. I just wish we had more time in that school setting because it was such an interesting setting about like young people, some of which like Elphaba were more extreme and like already radicalized and already believed a great number of things about the land. And then it was also a story simultaneously about her friends going down that similar path and their friends that didn't go down that path but still loved her and supported her. Just needed more. But maybe we'll get to the end and it'll be a whole holistic view. The one good thing I do see about like rushing through all this stuff is that now I imagine it's gonna go all the way up to her storyline in the Wonderful Wizard of Oz book when she's killed by Dorothy. Spoiler alert, not really. It's a 124-year-old book. And I am actually interested in seeing more of that because I didn't expect to see very much of that, if anything at all. So I am interested in the fact that we may get more of that because it seems like we're getting pretty close to that point because we're only at the 50% mark and Elphaba's already like 35. So that'll be a positive and I'm hoping to enjoy that in the second half. But yeah, overall, not quite what I was expecting, but I'm readjusting my expectations in order to enjoy the rest of this. But it is also making me very, very excited to watch the movie and watch the musical because now I'm like, I thought the book would have more plot, but now I'm starting to think that the musical might actually have more plot than the book. So I'm looking forward to that, hopefully. But I will continue reading and check in later. I'm back. My setup has shifted to the side because our Christmas tree is now set up. But I have finished Wicked. It took me so much longer. It's been a few days. It took me so much longer than I had initially planned. I'm willing to give this book a lot of grace for some reason. So my explanation will be that I went into this book with way different expectations than I should have had. Like, I just went in with all the wrong expectations. I thought it would be a comprehensive backstory about Elphaba. It really wasn't. I thought it would be very character-driven from Elphaba's point of view. It really wasn't. I had certain expectations based on the small things I know about the musical. Oh, like Glinda's and Elphaba's friendship is gonna have a lot of page time, and that it is very impactful in the book, but there just wasn't that much page time, all this stuff. But I think I can give my feelings pretty quickly and then like talk about it in the more like general scheme of Wicked things. But I think this book is probably gonna be like a 3.5 stars, which just sucks to think and say because I went into it expecting like a 5-star book. I was really, really excited. I don't like Gregory Maguire's writing style or storytelling style. It's just not for me. I also went into this thinking, what the majority of people online say when they say they don't like the books compared to the musical are that
they're like very graphic and like very sexual and like weird content is happening. I didn't feel that way about the books, maybe because I had those expectations, and there were like some weird scenes, or there was one weird scene that I was like, why? Why was this necessary? But otherwise, it was kind of what I expected there. That wasn't my biggest issue with the story. I thought the plot was really interesting. The points Gregory Maguire is trying to make about society are really interesting. The comparison he makes between like the Wizard of Oz book that I just read, so it's fresh in my mind, talking about how Oz is like humankind before society, but Gregory Maguire is kind of like taking that and being like, no, they are intertwined in the ways that the wizard brings our society into Oz and takes advantage of like innate traits of human nature in order to like become the leader of the country and all this stuff. I totally get all of that. I love that part. I like the story. I like what he does with the characters, the backstory, the little ways he ties into the Wizard of Oz book, and the little ways he makes the story his own in his own way. He changes the total dialogue of the witch meeting Dorothy. He changes all of that. But I really liked it. And I thought it was well done. I just didn't like everything else. I think that he threw in time skips whenever the story started getting interesting and good. He focused on long scenes and descriptions on things that weren't actually as relevant to the story he was trying to tell. If anything, it felt like he kind of was trying to do both a character-centered story and like a societal critique, and he couldn't manage to do both at once. There was a lot of society critique, but that like fell slightly short, in my opinion, in order to bolster Elphaba, who is like has all of these beliefs about society, but then we never really get inside her head fully either. We never really get a full understanding of her. So for me, it just fell short on a bunch of different levels. But those are my feelings about the book. I wouldn't say don't read it. I just would say I especially had the part of the book that I enjoyed was the fact that I just read the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and I'm preparing for the musical, so I'm looking specifically for things that tie into those, and I feel like that was fun. So I did enjoy that part of it. But if I was just to read this book by itself with no intention of like vlogging it or anything like that, I probably would have DNF'd it after the first massive time skip. I wanted more time with a certain set of characters, and this author did not want to give me that time. This author had a plot to get to. We had places to be. Like, I don't understand how there's 3 more books. There's like this story of this book could have been told in 4 books, and I would have loved it. It just went too fast. But I've said that quite a few times now, so I'll leave it at that. Overall, there were so many little interesting tie-ins with the book. I thought it was so interesting. The backstory of the straw men being a part of like a cult. Ignorant field workers wear a straw man as a charm against the pests of crops. Once upon a time, there was a tradition of human sacrifice about it. And the whole backstory of the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion thrown in, and Elphaba's story was really interesting, and I would have just liked more time, for example, with the character of Fiyero than what we got. That was probably the most interesting part of the book, was his affair with Elphaba from Fiyero's perspective. I thought that was so interesting. But then we get this time skip again. I'm like, I was just starting to get into the book. And then from that time skip, the story never really recovers. We do finally get Elphaba's perspective, and that's like the saving grace of the last 50% of this book. I was finally able to like move along with it because we had one character's perspective, one setting that we were with for the last 50% of the book. So I really appreciated that part of it. I did think it got better, but I'm glad it's over. I was really struggling to get through this book, but I am really excited to watch both versions of the Wicked adaptations because there's so much content here that's prime for adaptation in a different format. Like I said, the content's really interesting. I want the same content, just more of it. So luckily, that's what I'm about to do. And I will check in again after the next step. it is the same day, it is evening time, and because I have watched the Wicked musical through totally legal means, of course, and I wanted to give my immediate reaction after watching it. I really liked it. I'm not like the biggest musical on Broadway girl just because who has the money for that? But I've watched a few Broadway musicals and I've gone to see, specifically I've seen The Lion King, I've seen Hamilton, and I've seen some plays on Broadway and stuff like that, but I have never consumed any sort of Wicked musical content other than just knowing the songs that are popular in the public zeitgeist or were on Glee, unfortunately. I was like, how do I know the song popular so well? From Glee. Yeah. Initial thoughts, because I know the plot to the musicals is probably going to be the plot that the movie follows as well. So this is kind of like my first reaction to that plot versus the plot that we saw in Wicked. And I'm kind of adapting the idea of this whole journey video has kind of been really an experience of like The Wonderful Wizard of Oz as a book, then watching the 1939 take on it and what they did for what they had to change for what audiences at the time would like, changing it to a movie for all ages, not just a children's book, those things. Then reading Wicked, which was also a take on, I don't know where I'm pointing right now, take on the original Wonderful Wizard of Oz, both of which are adapting that story in different ways to suit their needs. So the Wicked book takes some changes from the original story, some of which I actually preferred the original story's version of. But now I'm watching the musical, which is specifically a take on the book. So it's really just like, I'm glad I read everything in the order that I did because it really is like watering down the story, not watering it down, that makes it sound so negative, but like passing along the story in a game of telephone and changing it up a little bit in each step. And you can see how things change and how the story that we are now going to watch in theaters has developed through all of these mediums. So I'll give my final thoughts on that after watching the movie, but it is fun to see even just after seeing the story in the musical. Well, I feel like they made a lot of narrative choices in the musical that made a lot of sense because the book didn't make a whole lot of sense. But I kind of knew that going in, so I was fine with it. But I can understand like when you're making a musical that's for a broader audience that probably isn't going to read the book, you need to change some things to like make the story make sense. So I actually liked all the changes they made, especially, and if you don't want any spoilers for the musical or movie, don't skip this next little bit, but especially the happy ending to the musical compared to the depressing as hell ending to the book. The fact I fully went into the musical having not a single clue that it was actually secretly a happy ending. I was shocked. I was relieved. I was giddy. I was singing No One Mourns the Wicked at the top of my lungs. I was so happy. So that's like, for example, a change from the book plot that I loved and totally made the story of the musical more worth it, especially because in the musical, Elphaba and Fiero get together much closer to the end than they do in the book. In the book, it's like in the middle, and then Elphaba lives a long life without Fiero before the story, versus in the musical, she lives about like 30 minutes without Fiero. I think that change also made sense for the musical storyline to follow along. The only change I can say that I'm not like 100% a fan of is just the fact that Fiero and Glinda in the book never had a romantic relationship because he was dark-skinned. In the book then, Glinda and him never get together and she would never even consider being with him because of that. So there's not this like weird context of Elphaba stealing Glinda's boyfriend. It doesn't really seem to get in the way of their friendship in the musical. Like Glinda still loves her despite her doing that to her. I just felt like you could have established Glinda's and Elphaba's friendship without making this whole like love triangle plotline that doesn't exist in the book. But I can also understand doing it because that's how you make Fiero into a love interest earlier in the musical when he's not a love interest earlier in the book as a young man because of his race. I just feel like I would offer the opportunity to explore these themes of prejudice in even more detail if Fiero was a person of color in the musical. I liked it better in the book, probably just because it had a more linear storytelling. I do think there are parts of the book that I like better. I like Elphaba and Fiero's relationship in the book better than in the musical. In the musical, it's a musical. It's kind of rushed through, and I don't necessarily feel that connection in the same way. That being said, I'm very excited for that part of the movie because I love Jonathan Bailey and people have been saying he's great in the movie, so I'm really excited for that. I have my movie tickets for tomorrow. But we're going to a theater that has recliner chairs and we're gonna go see the movie finally. I think it literally leaves theaters this weekend, so this is like my last chance to see it. So we're doing it very last minute, but I'm very, very excited because the music is all stuck in my head. So I just want more of the music overall. And I still just want more of this story. Is that crazy? Like, I spent like a week and a half on this story now, from the Wonderful Wizard of Oz to the movie to the book to the musical. And I'm still like, no, there could be more. Like, you could get into this even more. Like, there could be more depth. So as much as I hate a live action adaptation for no good reason, because I'm like, just watch the original content. In this case, there's so much to add to the original content, so I really hope they do add in the movie to what I've watched so far. But I did love the musical. It's very catchy, it's very cute, and excited to now watch the movie.
Glinda! Exactly how dead is she?
Hello, sorry, I'm back. I know you don't know how much time has passed, but it's been a few days since I watched the movie and I just haven't had time to film the final update for the video, so a little bit behind, but it's okay. I watched Wicked. I went to watch part 1 of Wicked and I really liked it. Honestly, it is pretty exact from the musical, but I had a really good time with it. Honestly, maybe more than I did with the bootleg of the musical. And I say that because on the bootleg of the musical, you can't really get a sense of like the set or the backdrop or the details that go into making it, because it's a bootleg and it's a little bit blurry. And the movie's obviously really clear, beautiful visuals, great setting. And also I just think that this setting works best in movie format, hot take. With the intricacy of the set and the intricacy of the surroundings, you get a better sense of the scope of the world in a movie setting. That being said, I did like the musical, just small opinions. I've never seen the musical live, so very biased opinion there. But yeah, overall, I like the movie. I've seen a lot of people online talking about like the visuals not being the best or whatever, and I could nitpick those things. Like there were some times, like in Popular, the sound editing was crazy. There were so many sound effects that it like was overwhelming the actual singing. But in the end of the day, like I went just to have fun, and I had a lot of fun. I enjoyed what I watched, so that's the most important part. In terms of comparisons between the book, the musical, and the movie, now that I've seen all three, the thing that's pretty consistent across all of them is Glinda and Elphaba's characterization. That Elphaba's a little bit sarcastic and biting, and Glinda's like soft at heart, but refuses to consider herself an intellectual and refuses to like fall into intellectualism and all of those things. And I like them both. I think Glinda and Elphaba are probably like the only thing that really stays the same across all three, but that they're so both really great and I really liked them. And I feel like in the book there's definite like romantic vibes between Elphaba and Glinda, very much in the sense of like Glinda is the perspective through which we meet adult Elphaba, and Glinda thinks that she's just annoyingly beautiful. She's like, she should be ugly, but then she puts on that hat and she's just gorgeous, and I hate that. And then when they're like adults, Glinda looks back at her life and is like, I'll always remember fondly the time we shared a bed on that train. And so it's more like written out romantic vibes, but I do still feel like they give really intimate vibes in the musical and the movie, so I do think their relationship is just like the center of everything. I don't know, maybe that's why I didn't really like the second half of the musical as much, because it's more centered around Fiero and Elphaba's relationship, which is still fine, still good, just not as good as the first half. But yeah, music carried over well in the movie, loved all that stuff. I'm not like a musical critique person, you didn't come here to watch that. I think I liked the world building of the book better. I think the book was more intricate, and although I only gave it 3 stars, I wish that more of that story had been adapted, because I wanted to see more of that story adapted. But the changes that I did like were that Elphaba actually doesn't have a ton of agency in the book. When she gets her magic broom, it's a mysterious gift from this woman that she doesn't really know why, and she gains the ability to use magic later in the book, but it's like almost incidental, and it's not really something that she really like tries to learn as a young woman. So I like that change in the musical and the movie, and giving Elfie's more of a center stage, because in the book it's her book and she does not feel like center to the story. So I do like that change. I wanted to do, that's why I have this white wall next to me, because I wanted to do like a little ranking of everything I consumed in this video with like little pictures. My printer is not working. Instead we'll have to do like little digital visuals. Sorry, bear with me. It's not gonna be as like cutesy, but hopefully it'll still get the point across. In terms of like overall enjoyment, I would say, and I consumed 5 pieces of media in this video as a reminder: The Wonderful Wizard of Oz book, The Wizard of Oz film, Wicked the book, Wicked the musical, Wicked the movie. Overall enjoyment, I think I'd probably rank the movie on top, and then The Wonderful Wizard of Oz book, and then the Wicked musical, Wicked book, Wizard of Oz movie. Yeah, something like that is probably my final ranking there in terms of overall enjoyment. Even for The Wizard of Oz at the bottom, I had fun with it with a friend. It wasn't like, it's not a movie I'm ever gonna watch again. Same with the book. As much as like I really wanted to enjoy it and I kind of enjoyed what was trying to be conveyed, wasn't my favorite thing on earth. In terms of quality, like actually like being very good, and this may do disservice to the musical, because again, this is based on a bootleg of the musical, but in terms of like overall quality, I would say The Wonderful Wizard of Oz book, I really liked that. I had fun with it. Wicked the movie, Wicked the musical, then Wicked the book, then Wonderful Wizard of Oz movie. That's kind of hard. I might switch up the Wizard of Oz movie. Maybe I'm kind of being harsher on that because it's been a little while since I watched it. I think maybe Wizard of Oz movie in terms of actual quality could potentially get bumped up to 3rd. Those bottom 3 are kind of just like where they are. I'm not like the absolute arbiter on quality. So that's just my personal opinions on the quality. In terms of my favorite Elphabas are the movie musical combination, because it's pretty much the same exact character, but I do love Cynthia's take on it. So it's probably going to be the movie Elphaba, musical Elphaba, book Elphaba, and then The Wonderful Wizard of Oz book, then The Wizard of Oz. Probably something similar for Glinda, although I did love Glinda in the book. Actually, I think Glinda in the book might be my favorite, then Glinda in the musical, then Ariana's Glinda in the movie, then Glinda in the Wizard of Oz movie, and then The Wonderful Wizard of Oz book, because those are basically just at the bottom. I wanted to also rank Fiyero. He's a little bit harder. In the Wicked book, Fiyero is Fiyero, and then in the musical he gets merged with another character called Avaric, who in the book is like very handsome, very charming, very suave when they're in school. So, and then falls in love with Elphaba after school is Fiero's character. So they kind of merge the two of those together for the musical, in handsome and suave at school, and then falls in love with Elphaba after school. They kind of merge those. But I will say Fiyero in the book is absolutely my favorite. Really great character. I wish we had more time with him in the book, obviously, but I felt that way about a lot of things in the book. And then after that, probably Fiyero in the musical, and then in the movie, I love Jonathan Bailey, but we haven't seen part 2, and that's where his character gets more development, so I'll have to see part 2 before I make a final judgment there. And then he's not in the other 2 pieces of media. So those are the only rankings I have there. I think. So I think overall that shows that the Wicked movie and the Wonderful Wizard of Oz book were my favorite parts, but that there were qualities to the Wicked book that I enjoyed. And I think if you love the musical, if you love the movie, I think reading the book will just give you more of that. It's definitely not my preferred writing style, but I was also like forcing myself to read it even though I wasn't really in the mood for it this month, and I'm a mood reader. So if you're in the mood for something a little bit more non-linear and you go into it prepared for it to kind of be like a secondhand perspective on Elfie's life, then I think you can definitely still enjoy it, and it's still fun. I also think that the world building in the book is better than the musical and movie. It's more solid, it's more based around like, because you have a larger cast of characters. It's going to be like for the musical, you isolate the cast of characters to 4 primary characters for a musical style format, and then they carry that over into the movie, when I feel like in the movie it could have been their chance to introduce a larger cast of characters and like a bigger one than what they had, especially when you're doing a part 1 and a part 2. There's so much more room, but they do have a lot of songs to fit in and everything like that, so I do understand why they did it. But if you just want like more world building and more depth to the story, I think Wicked is such sick world building. Love that. But yeah, overall, I had a fun time with this video. I had a fun time being introduced to this whole Wicked world that everyone knows so much about that I don't, and like being a part of it. And now all of these songs that I've known for years and have hummed to without really knowing where they were from, now I know the origins. And I'm really excited to watch part 2 of the Wicked movie. I thought it was really good. I really recommend it. Was it perfect? No. But I think for a musical, the intention is for it to be a fun time, and it was a fun time. Probably the most fun I had with any piece of media in this video. And I do think I'm a little bit biased towards The Wonderful Wizard of Oz because it was the first thing I consumed about this story, and then everything from there just like felt like it was building upon that, and Wonderful Wizard of Oz still feels like the foundation for everything in this video. But I think it was fun to do the journey that I did. I think if you like any one of these individual pieces of media, then you won't be disappointed with the other 4 because it just adds more to the world and more to the story. But that's it. I hope you've enjoyed witnessing me learn about all of this stuff for the first time. If you knew everything about Wicked and you were shocked at how little I didn't know, feel free to comment below. I would love to hear people's thoughts on the movie compared to the musical, especially if you got the chance to see the musical live. Or if you are an old fan of The Wizard of Oz and you have thoughts there, I'd also love to hear them. But other than that, thank you so much and have a great day. Bye.